Welcome acolytes, I'm Graveseeker, and today I'm actually gonna do a character study or watch a character study from the Tail Foundry. Because guess from what? Death. Of course Death. Because who the actual F wouldn't see this as one of the things I'm interested in? Like honestly, yes, this is my thing. Like Death, the cultural appearance of it, and you can see the games about there. That's irrelevant. Like I literally have a freaking lich avatar. What Death? Like yes, Death is something very interesting to me, and I actually also oh, what's this? Tropic Talk, irrelevant. Yeah, and it's something that's actually quite like I love the thematic since I was a little boy, and now let's hear them out. But if you like my content, leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, and press the notification button, you know. And of course, Tail Foundry, also, do it.
Death has a lot of faces. Many you already know. The Grim Reaper, Hades, Santa Muerte, Anubis, Anku, Reaper, Hades, Santa Muerte, Anubis, Anku, Yama, the Black Dog. But most of these...
And every single one of them is from a different culture. That's so fascinating how the idea of death itself just takes different incarnations. Like the European death, neutral force, does what it does. And most of the time it's neutral, by the way. Anubis, Egyptian. The god that actually, well, he doesn't kill directly, but he gets the people in, and or was it Seth? Damn, I effed up there. I don't remember. But most of the time, death itself is just not a messenger. He does the job, brings the souls, and that's his job.
These are also not death. They might facilitate the process, oversee the underworld, herald the end, escort you to the next life, but they themselves are not death. Because, of course, death is a process, not a person, which means that these are all really just metaphors and explanations for it. But what if death were a person? The process itself, incarnate with feelings and opinions and preferences?
Ooh, that's something. And just to give you my actual thinking, in my eyes, death would be a purely neutral force that actually just does his job. It's his job, so he does it, but he would be also fascinated with human beings itself, with life itself, because he just doesn't have it. And things that you don't have, you normally crave for them.
What would death be like? What do you hope death would be like? Sadly, you may never know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
But over the years, a great many authors and artists have created the next best thing. Over and over, we see them taking death itself and turning it into a character.
Yes. This is... Yeah. Okay. I love this. This is so freaking just...
Normally we put a little sponsor plug right here. This is where I mention it in passing, so you're not surprised when it comes up later. But this time is very different. Our sponsor for this video isn't trying to sell you anything at all. Not even sort of. They're a non-profit organization called 80,000 Hours, and their entire mission is to help you find the most meaningful, most fulfilling career you possibly can. They've done...
You know what, we're gonna skip this?
Who would...
Because 80,000 hours, I think I know that. I'm gonna inform myself about it again after this video and then decide if I put a link down or not.
What would death be? What would they be like? I think for most of us, the most obvious personality would be a very cruel one. It is, after all, the ultimate source of human suffering.
I mean, acolytes, would it, like, be honest with yourself, every one of you that actually watches this, would death be a cruel master for you?
I think it's quite...
Oh, sorry about that, I misclicked. Because why would it be a cruel monster for something that actually just does his job? Because the killing itself isn't ever made by death. The taking of the soul, that's always done by death. He ends you. He takes your soul with you. That's what I see, at least. I see it as a neutral force. Not good, not evil, but he does what he has to do, but he doesn't actively try to actually destroy things.
Natural to envision death as someone sadistic and malevolent who revels in the agony they leave in their wake. I mean, death has never missed an appointment so far. It only follows that they probably love their job. Is it any wonder that death itself is so often depicted as a ghoul, a skeleton, a zombie, a gaunt, pale figure? If death is a thing to be feared, shouldn't it look and act that way? John Milton certainly seemed to think so. In his 17th century epic poem Paradise Lost, he describes what I would call a quintessentially evil death. The figure only appears in the work briefly, but in that short span, we see nothing in him but aggression, malice, and debauchery.
Yep.
In the poem, death is the incestuous child of sin and Satan, whom Milton sort of sets up as father and daughter. Anyway, after Adam's transgression in the Garden of Eden, death leaves hell with sin in order to spread their gifts on earth. That is, suffering and evil. In more concrete terms, death literally goes around with darts and arrows and has a great old time flinging them at people. Also, just like his dad, at some point he and sin copulate, and that's how the Hellhounds are conceived, forever.
By the way, if you don't know the Hellhounds, Cerberus.
Barking inside Sin's womb. Like I said, quintessentially evil, almost the poster child for a malevolent death.
No, not Cerberus. Why am I slipping out in the Greek? No, Hellhounds, normal Hellhounds. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
But it's also a bit removed, right? This is technically an incarnation of death, and I think we can assume it has feelings, opinions, preferences, but he's also pretty one-dimensional, isn't he?
Yep. Totally, I don't agree with that. This is a one-cut-out villain. And even if, people died before that, so...
Dangerously close to just being a symbol or a metaphor, like so many of the mythological depictions. But what would it look like to depict death as both cruel and extremely intimate at the same time?
Okay, let's be honest here. It's death. You don't... The guy's intimidating enough.
Dear, a movie came out that shocked me. I never expected to even get passingly philosophical about an entry into the Shrek franchise, let alone in a video about death, but here we are, and here I go.
Yes.
Puss in Boots: The Last Wish does some...
Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, watch it. Freaking awesome. The depiction of death in there is magnificent.
Incredible things with its characters. One of its most interesting characters by far is a hulking white wolf in a black robe, a mysterious bounty hunter who stalks the protagonist throughout the movie. Of course, we eventually find out that this is death itself coming to claim our hero's ninth and final life. Where Milton's death is cruel in a general sense, the bounty hunter in this movie is a deeply personal character. He literally engages in physical combat with the hero, even though he could very clearly overpower just about anyone he chooses. It's like he takes pleasure in the chase, enjoys toying with his victims before claiming them. This is a death who wants you to fear him, and does an excellent job inspiring that emotion in even the bravest hearts. Cruel as both of those examples may be, it's also interesting how directed their cruelty seems to be. Okay, maybe not Milton's death, that guy just seems nasty, but Puss in Boots' version seems more like a lesson about human hubris in the face of their all-but-guaranteed demise.
Yes, and by the way, the death of Puss in Boots, by the way, spoilers, he actually, at the end, he basically only hunts Puss in Boots because he doesn't respect his lives. And I'm not gonna go deeper in that, because just watch it. It's so beautifully done. This is a version of death I would actually quite love.
Which makes it almost sentimental? I mean,
Yes,
as
this is the right
horrifying
word,
as it
yes.
is to think of death as this malevolent character who will hunt you down and toy with your mortality, you know, I think it might also be scarier if it just didn't care at all. I mean, isn't it a bit
yeah.
presumptuous to think that if death were a person, they would even have the time to consider any particular one of the more than 100,000 human lives that wink out every day? Death is a force of nature. Maybe even cruelty seems a bit beneath it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, this is true, by the way. This depiction is also like, okay, but it would be a entirely neutral force, like without any personality or something like that. It would be just, I think the closest is, I don't remember. I know I saw a film with a nice depiction of that, but I don't remember the title.
Somehow, if anything, shouldn't we expect death to be kind of ambivalent? To be honest, I think you actually kind of already do. In fact, I think this characterization is even more common than the malevolent one. I mean, even the version of death that shows up in the massively popular TV show Supernatural can pretty much be described this way, comparing humanity to a mere bacterium, not out of disdain, but merely to create a sense of scale. And really, what is a single mortal life to death? In fact, outside of a preoccupation against the vastness of death, what is mortal life? Period. In the 2008 movie Hellboy 2, there's a scene where, after the hero is mortally wounded, his lover approaches the Angel of Death himself to ask for help. And honestly, kind of an alright guy. He says that he can in fact help, but there's a catch. The hero, he says, is fated to bring about the end of the world. So, the final choice is up to her. Let this angel claim the one she loves, or spare him and sacrifice everyone else. I think this is where that ambivalent quality becomes really interesting. Yes, this personification does allow the hero to live, but he does it knowing full well what it will cost the rest of the world. Yes. 1 life, 1 billion lives. In the end, it seems to make no difference to him. In his own words,
"It is all the same to me. My heart is filled with dust and sand."
You could probably guess by its apparent popularity, but this detached, couldn't-care-less version of death is also not particularly novel. We've been seeing these divested, impersonal, almost apathetic characterizations of death in media since at least the 50s, and probably much earlier. The 1957 film The Seventh Seal features what is probably the most iconic example of this ever. You'll recognize the imagery immediately. The movie follows a disillusioned knight after the Crusades. When he sees death approaching, he challenges the apparition to a game of chess. If he wins, death will leave him be. If he loses, well, we can guess. But, amused, death assures him that he cannot win and that there is no escape. But, amused, he agrees to play along. The game lasts several sessions, between which the two find ways to manipulate and deceive each other into losing. Death makes illegal moves. The hero knocks over the chessboard by accident. In the end, as Death promised, there was never any hope for the knight, and Death, at last, checkmates his victim. Although, while Death is distracted, 3 other would-be victims are able to use the opportunity to escape, which, for a knight freshly returned from the Crusades with a load of guilt on his conscience, makes the whole game worth it. It seems almost intuitive to imagine Death as an ambivalent character like this. It just seems to fit, because in reality, Death doesn't really have a bias. It's just a thing that happens. It doesn't differentiate between the value of 1 or 1 billion lives, doesn't regard you as any more or less significant than the bacterium on your tissue, doesn't even take its job seriously enough to ensure that every single would-be victim gets caught. I think the interesting underlying idea here is that if mortals don't matter very much, then death doesn't matter very much, does it? And in that, there's also something wonderfully, bizarrely endearing, almost human. to imagine that death, the thing that will kill you, is also happy to make a little deal with you, or even sit down for a nice game of chess. Imagine how it would feel for death to do these things not out of apathy or a sense that it just doesn't matter very much, but instead because they genuinely want to. Imagine characterizing death not as someone malevolent or ambivalent, but benevolent, kind, with a genuine love in their heart for the creatures that they must also, in the end, kill. It's kind of a striking, subversive visual, isn't it? Unsurprisingly, it also describes some of...
Also a bit counterintuitive. It is somewhat counterintuitive because, yeah, it's... If you do shit jobs for a while, you know what I mean with that. Because at some point you just stop caring. Normally.
the most beloved characterizations of death ever. I'll start with one of the more concrete examples of this. Death, from Neil Gaiman's legendary graphic novel series, The Sandman. In the story, she's one of the Endless, a sort of godlike family of incarnations, each embodying a different aspect of human experience. She's distinct from her siblings, and pretty much every other version of death in this video, in that she's oddly personable and, female, not for nothing. She takes the shape of a friendly, young, conversational goth woman. Frankly, you're far more likely to find her having a conversation in the park than doing anything even remotely Reaper-like. She takes care to meet every soul that enters this world, not only when they die, but when they're first born as well. She doesn't really come to collect your soul so much like the others. She more comes to visit, like an old friend. She is the voice of reason to her brother Dream and a tender companion to all mortals. She is still death, of course. She still has a job to do, but who said she can't be compassionate about it? Okay, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you probably saw this coming a mile off, but there's no way I'm going to mention Neil Gaiman's version of death in this video without talking about Terry Pratchett's too. His series Discworld has maybe the single most beloved characterization of death ever, and for very good reason. Discworld is a series famous for its satire and comedy, and early on, Death's role was no different, more of a parody than anything else. But over time, the character evolved into something very special. He has all sorts of quirks and interests.
Look at this little Reaper mouse, this is so cute.
He's fond of cats and curry, and occasionally smoking his pipe. On one occasion, he filled in for the role of Discworld's version of Santa Claus. He's been known to meddle in mortal affairs in ways that displease the cosmos. But more than anything, as you read the books, it becomes clear that Death is absolutely fascinated by humanity. This reaches something of a climax in the book Reaperman when his affection for humanity begins to affect his personality. Realizing that he's started to care, he's sent by the Auditors of Reality to live as a mortal while they look for his replacement. In the end, however, after much havoc, he eventually returns to his rightful place, and in the process, he makes an incredible point. All things that are ours, but we must care. For if we do not care, we do not exist. If we do not exist, then there is nothing but blind oblivion, and even oblivion must end someday. What can the harvest hope for, if not for the care of the Reaper Man?
And let's just say it in my own words. If you live a freaking fruitless life, you're done. You will die anyway, so might as well just enjoy it.
I think part of the reason authors seem to enjoy not only personifying but lending character to death like this is because it's such an unknown. To turn it into something interactive and conscious, whether malevolent, ambivalent, or benevolent, makes it feel more approachable. Something you can talk to, listen to, understand to some extent. It makes death feel like something emotional and intentional, rather than some cosmic accident that is bound to befall every single person you ever met. Is it any wonder then that the benevolent characterizations of death are so well loved? There is no way to stop the hurt. Death is not nice. It never will be. But maybe it helps in some small way to think that If death itself had thoughts and feelings about the whole ordeal, they would at least treat you kindly. In his
Yes.
book, The Art of Discworld, Terry Pratchett says he'd sometimes get letters from terminally ill fans saying that they hope his books got death right. It may just be fiction, but it's a helpful thought. Much easier to love a version of death who loves you. In part, I think that's because death is a function of life as well. Just as the end of the story completes the narrative arc for the foreseeable future, death completes the human experience, and we all want our stories to be worth telling. Unfortunately for you humans, it can be kind of hard to feel like that's the case. Did you know that most people spend about 80,000 hours of their life just working? Doing tasks to get money to pay for the things they need? Don't you wish sometimes that you could just get out of that grind? Spend that time to make...
Okay, he's he's doing the sponsor thing, yeah. Nicely done. But yes, I'm gonna watch it, and if it's a good thing, I'm gonna include it down there. And at the end of the day, the conclusion of the entire video is, well, it's a really extremely interesting and important subject to actually think about at least once in your life. Just think about it. Just stay still, go in, think about the entire thing, and then just accept it and just enjoy life after that. Like, don't do anything like this like he just presented with the 80,000 grinding hours, I guess, in a job you hate, because I already have that behind me, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm at the point where I just don't give a shit anymore about that. I'm gonna find my way through no matter what, so it is what it is. But as it is, acolytes, good night.